Hey guys, myself Rakesh and I welcome you back to ExpoHub channel. Now this question what you see on my screen is one of the complex question. If you know robotic enterprise framework in a detailed way, you will be able to answer it. If not, this video is going to help clarify this question. Most of us might go wrong while selecting one of the answer. So let's read the question. A developer notices that in a process that uses the robotic enterprise framework, sometimes the initialization state fails with an application exception. So this is the underlined statement. Your RE framework or at the initialization state it fails as the application exception. Okay. By default, what happens if the initialization state fails? So what would happen? So they have given 4 different options, okay, and they are very confusing if you do not know how the initialization block works. Okay, so here if you read this, initialization state is a retried number of times equals to the max retried number defined in the config xlx. Is it correct? Execution goes to the end process state without any retries on the system exception failed. Is this correct? Initialization state is retried a number of times equals to max hash of retries defined in the queue. Is it relevant to the queue? First of all, okay, execution goes to the end process state after one retry. After doing one retry it will go. Is this even relevant? So these options are very confusing until unless you know how it works. If you know it, it is a very simple answer. So let me first of all introduce you to the initialization block. Okay, let's open the initialization block. Okay, we'll go step by step because this is a tricky question. And the next thing I would like you to do is minimize everything. Okay, just minimize so that we'll have a complete understanding. Okay, so we have minimized the entire initialization block. So what do I see in the entry state, right? In the this is the state. So now in the entry section of the state, they are using there is a try catch block, and inside the try section there is a sequence. Okay, the sequence says it is going to load the configuration and open application. The activities written inside the sequence, the job is to load the config file and open the specific application required for that project. Okay, and here in the catch section they are only using a system exception. If you see, if you highlight, there is only a system exception. Okay, there is only a system exception they have defined, and if you click on the system exception, here exactly you have the answer, but there is some more detailed understanding you need. Okay, if you are an advanced user, then you must have some detailed understanding which I'm going to help you. Okay, so this much we have understood. So there is a try block, and let's expand the sequence that is available in the try block. Okay, we are going very slow. Let's open it. Okay, if you open it, what do you see? There are around 4 different activities kept inside the sequence. Okay, the first one says system exception is nothing. That is where it is going to read the config file. Okay, and the second one, the max consecutive system exception. Okay, this is the place you may not have a complete understanding. What is this max consecutive system exception? I am going to explain that. Okay, now below this there is something called invoke init application workflow. If you expand this, so this is the place where you are opening all the application. So this workflow is responsible to open the required application for the project. Okay, all right, so these are the 3 sections. Now system exception. Now while I am running this specific set of area, this is the initialization state. Now where the system exception can come? If I ask you simply, where the system exception can come. So the system exception can come while running the sequence, while running the activities inside the sequence. For example, system exception means, let's say this block is responsible to read the configuration file. While reading the configuration file, it is highly possible the Excel application won't respond, or there is some kind of a issue with the MS Office wherein it can't read that XLSX, because this config file, right, this is the config file, and this config file is available here in the project data config. So this is the Excel file. Now if there is any problem with the Microsoft Excel, right, if that does not respond, this set of activities that is there, right, so if I expand, it becomes slightly confusing, but this is the entire activity where it's trying to read the config file. Okay, it is trying to kill the any opened processes and all those things. A lot of things are written inside that, but basically it is reading the configuration file. So while running this, there could be an error. While running this activity, there could be an error, right? While opening the application, specifically here, while I'm opening the ABCD web page or a website or a URL, there could be an error. So anywhere there is an error while running this, let me minimize, while running this sequence, anywhere there is an error, doesn't matter where, anywhere there is an error, what would happen? As per the try catch block, the error will be thrown, the error will be caught by the catch section. That is simple mechanics, right? So it will be caught by the catch section. Now what is written here? The exception. It says failures during the initializations are considered system exceptions and lead to the end process state. So anywhere while I'm running the sequence there in the try block, if there is any kind of a error anywhere, what would happen? This is the answer: lead to the end process state. It immediately goes to the end process state, thus finalizing the execution. So it does not retry, it does not at all retry. If there is an error anywhere while I am, any activity there inside this sequence, if there is any error, what would happen? It'll be caught, because if there is any error, the error will be caught immediately, doesn't matter where. If there is an error in any activity, it will be immediately caught by the catch section. And the catch section, what we are doing here we are setting the system exception variable equals to exception. That means we are passing a value to this, right? So what would happen by passing the value to this? If you, let me minimize. Okay, now if you look at this, the initialization state, right, this is the block. If there is an error, right, if the value of the variable system exception is set to something, what would happen? Let me show you. If you scroll down, okay, let me first open this one, system exception. Okay, let me open this transition. So what would happen, or let me explain in a better way. So if you see, if there is a system exception, if you open this transition or double click on this transition, you open this way or that way, doesn't matter. The moment you open, what is saying? System exception is nothing. If system exception is nothing, if it is successful, if there is no system exception, then it will go to get transaction data. If there is a system exception is not nothing, means there is an exception, then where it will go to end process. Getting it? So now if I go back, what happens? If there's any kind of a system exception, it will immediately go to end process without trying anything. So the answer for this question is execution goes to the end process state without any retries on the system exception. It will not retry, it will immediately go to end process state. Failed initialization transition. Getting it? So here there are so many confusions. Okay, there are still confusions. If you really wanted to get deep into this initialization block, there are confusions. What is the confusion? What I'm talking about? Let me expand the try block. Let me go inside this sequence. Now look at this. Okay, this block I understood, Rakesh. It is responsible to read the configuration file. It is clearly written. Okay, it is responsible to read the configuration file, and here they have given a condition config is nothing. So it is going to only read the config file if it is for the very first time, when the config variable is set to nothing. Config is a dictionary variable. If you go here, config is a dictionary variable which is by default nothing. So for the very first time, now once it reads it, it will assign value to the config dictionary, so that would remain. So if you go here, after the process transaction, when it comes back to this state, if there is a system exception, let's say you are processing something, while processing there could be a system exception, the application did not respond or the web page did not respond, so there is a system exception. The moment there is a system exception, it will come back to the initialization block. Now when it comes back to this block, it is not going to read the config file once again. Why? Because there is a value to the config dictionary variable, so it won't read this, it will skip it. So because it's if condition, right, it will not go through that, it will go to the next activity. Now here the next activity, right, what they have mentioned, this condition is very important. Okay, many may not have a right understanding of this particular activity, this if activity. Let me tell you what is it. Okay, have little focus, because what I'm going to teach, you need to have a lot of focus to understand this. Okay, let's start. Now first thing I want you to read this. If max consecutive system exception exceeded. Now the question is, what is this max consecutive system exception? First question. So to get that answer, please go to the config file, open the config file and hit on the constants. Here there is a, because in your entire config works on a dictionary, this is the key name. What is the key name? This is not a variable, this is a key. In a dictionary, there is a key and a value, right? So this is the key name. Max consecutive system exception, whose value by default is given 0. By default value 0. Now read the description. The number of consecutive system exceptions allowed if max consecutive system exception is reached. The job is stopped. To disable this feature, set the value to 0. Now what is the meaning of it? Let's say I am going to provide the max retry as 3. So the moment I provide and save it, the max retry number is 3 here. Okay, with this example we'll go. What is this max consecutive retry? So this is simply a value given to this particular key. Now let's go back to our RE framework. Okay, now read this condition. Let me open this in a bigger window so it becomes slightly easy to read. Okay, getting it? So have a lot of patience, because you need a lot of patience to understand. Okay, now let me increase slide a bit. Hope you are able to see my screen properly. Okay, now read this. So config is a dictionary variable and this is the key value. So what they are saying, and it's converting that value to integer, that's all. So it's saying if the max consecutive system exception value is greater than 0. So in our case, let's say I am saying 3. So in our case it is greater than 3, yes or no? Greater than 0, yes or no? Yes. So this condition is met. Okay, and also consecutive system exception, Now what is this consecutive system exception? Let me show you. This consecutive system exception is a variable again. So if you scroll down, this is a simple integer variable whose value is by default kept to 0. By default it's kept to 0. So what is this consecutive system exception? Let me show you in detail. So first of all, let's understand the condition, then I'm going to show you the answer. So here this condition is met. In our case it's greater than 0, we have put 3, and also the consecutive system exception greater than equals to, the consecutive system should be greater than or equals to. So here our consecutive variable value is 0, so it is not greater than or equals to 3, because it is 0, right? It's not greater than 3. So what would happen, because of this condition is written like this, the throw consecutive exception won't work. So this one won't work unless it meets the condition. So Rakesh, when is it going to meet the condition? So I understood what is this consecutive exception, but where exactly and how it's going to meet the condition, please explain. Okay, so let's say it is going to, okay, first of all let's understand how it's going to meet the condition, when this particular E block will be executed, right? That is the question we have. So let's go to the main workflow. Okay, so now what happens, let's imagine you have processed you have from the queue you have taken one item, and you are trying to process in the process transaction. While let's say you are entering a data into a finance application, while you are entering, the application did not respond, it's frozen. So what you would like to do, you would like to again retry, you would like to reopen that application or refresh that application and then process the same transaction once again, correct? So this kind of a error is called system exception. So I'm going to show you, when the system exception occurs, it's going to the initialization block, this much we know. Now what happens, let's go inside the process transaction state. Okay, let me minimize everything, always minimize, because that is where you will understand. So here I'm in the process transaction state, let's expand it one by one. Okay, now if there's an exception, what would happen? While processing, there's an exception, the exception is caught here in the catch section, right? In the catch section it is caught. What kind of exception? System exception is caught. Now in the system exception, what they have done, they are using a workflow here with a try catch block within a try catch block. Now in this workflow, let's go inside this workflow, set transaction status. Okay, let's go inside this workflow to understand what is written here. So look at this. Here, when there is a system exception, right, what are the activities being performed in the system exception? So look at this workflow. In this workflow, what they are doing, let me not explain everything, but let me point out what is happening. If you see, there is a assign activity used here, and in the assign activity, what they are doing, they are increasing the variable. So initial value of the consecutive system exception is 0. 0 plus 1, what will happen? It will become 1. The moment the consecutive system exception becomes 1, what would happen? Let's go back to the main. Okay, so the consecutive system retry variable got the value 1 now, 0 plus 1, so it become 1. So it will come to the initialization block. The moment it comes to the initialization block, what would happen? Here again it will go through this condition. Okay, uh, greater than 3, this is correct, and also consecutive system exception value is 1 now. 1 is greater than equals to 3, no, so it won't run, this throw activity won't run. Let's say there is one more failure, while processing another transaction there is another failure, again it will come here. Now the value of the consecutive system exception would have become 2, from 0 1 then 2. Now 2 greater than or equals to 3, 2 is not greater, so again the throw activity in this if block won't run, right? In this if block, this throw activity will not run. Let's say there is one more failure, one more system, while you are processing 100 items, there is one more system exception happened. So at that time, the consecutive system exception value would become 3. The moment it becomes 3, 3 greater than or equals to 3, max we have set as 3 in the config file. The moment it meets the condition, what would happen that time? Because there are repeated failures happening in our system, this if activity will execute, because that we have decided that in the config file max retry consecutive system we have mentioned 3. Because we have decided for it to not continue further, at that specific time the this throw activity is going to work. The moment it throws, what happens? If an error is thrown from this, what would happen? Immediately it'll it'll not go to the rest of the activity below that, it will immediately caught by the catch section. And here, as per the exception defined here in the catch section, it is going to go to the end state. right? So finally what would happen? The system exception variable will have a value, and with that value it is going to go to the end process state. So now your doubt should be very clear. You must have a this is slightly complicated because there are so many things I have explained, but you must be having a complete understanding by now that what is this max consecutive system exception, and also you must be having an idea what is this consecutive system exception and where this value is getting incremented. Okay, all right. So with that, your answer, you must be sure that this is what the answer I should select. I should not get confused with all these options given here. Max retry number, this is not even max consecutive system exception, it is saying max retry number, right? That is different, and this max retry number is different, that is related to orchestrator queues, and this is different. So none of the answers here are correct apart from this. So this is the right answer. Execution goes to the end process state without any retries on the system exception failed. Okay, this required a lot of explanation. Now if you are an advanced learner, you must have understood all the explanation that I've given, and you must have made sense out of it, right? So that sense is very much required for us to understand and build a logical approach. Okay, why, what, why it, how it works. So all those answers you must have got it. So thank you guys for watching it and having patience to listen to my lecture, because it was a long thing that I've explained. Thank you so much, and we are going to meet in the next video. Take care. Bye bye.